Welcome back. I am Victoria.
And I'm Fred Trotter.
And we are data journalists at CareSet. In this episode, we are covering the test positivity trends. We are the CareSet Journal. We are a data journalism organization, and typically we focus on Medicare data. So some of the data that we're going to be talking about today we are very familiar with, but some of it, such as the census data, not so much. Fred, would you like to take it over?
Yeah, so the other people that we really want to give credit to are the researchers from University of Minnesota, Hospital Tracking Project, volunteers from the COVID Exit Strategy, and then the COVID Tracking Project really help us to put together the FAQ for this. And what this video series is essentially a kind of explainer so that we can go through and talk about the things that are in the FAQ, that are explained in the FAQ, but one at a time with the various blocks of data. And in this block of data, we're talking about test positivity. And I think, from my perspective, test positivity is the most difficult to analyze because it's not clear what good is at different times. So if you look down here at this kind of bottom period, so just to explain, this is the same information. It's the test positivity rate over time, both on the left side and the right side. Here it's grouped by month, and here it's grouped by day. And so these tiny little things here on the screen, those are the age ranges. So as you're looking down here in the bottom left of this is the actual number of tests that are done. So this is the testing rate. And up here is the percentage of the tests that are positive. And so remember when back in the early days of COVID, when it's like everybody's talking about testing, the testing crisis. Well, this is the testing crisis. And during the testing crisis, the probability that you would get a test was very related to you having pretty severe symptoms. And so you can see how, well, yeah, a huge percentage of the people they were giving these very low number of tests to were coming back positive. So as the testing crisis resolved itself and we got more and more tests into the market, you can see the percentage goes down. And that's what you want to see in general. You want to see that the testing is being used to try to inform people that they need to isolate. And the more people tested, the more people successfully isolate and don't, kind of spread the disease. And so you want this to be in general down. Now, you might be at a point, and again, it's very confusing because here at the beginning, it's kind of okay that these were higher numbers. And eventually, hopefully, we'll get on the other side of COVID. And as we do, fewer and fewer people will really need to be tested. So at the beginning of the pandemic and theoretically at the end of the pandemic, it's okay for these kind of numbers to go up. But during the middle here, you want them to go down, right? Because what that means is you're doing a lot of testing, and that means you're informing a lot of people that they need to isolate, and therefore kind of controlling the explosion of the pandemic. And therefore it's a problem here, and I'm gonna kind of move to the side here. You see the number of testings really spiking, but then also at the same time, the percentage is also spiking. The fact that the testing is increasing and also the percentage positive rate is increasing is part of the reason why people are so concerned with this winter surge, because it really is getting out of control. And we as a society need these numbers to be down, because that again means we're constraining the flood. That's pretty complicated, and I just want to point out that it's not necessarily always true that having a low percentage positivity is bad. There might be other phases of this whole thing that's true, but it's certainly you want a low percentage now. And so the next is that we're going to consider is the regions, and I'd like, Victoria, would you help me out here?
Other way. Oh, okay, so.
Yeah,
all right.
Okay.
Perfect.
There.
So all of the different FEMA regions, which a person in the government is going to see these numbers, they're going to know exactly where in the U.S. you're talking about. For everyone else, all of us, we don't have that knowledge. And so if you can bring up the website, really quick, and then we can go back. We will have this embedded on the FAQ on our GitHub, but this will show you exactly where we're talking about when we're looking back at the graphs.
Yeah, so Victoria and I live in Texas. I don't think either one of us can remember that we have number 6. We're in 6.
You learned that.
So, so now that you know what the FEMA regions are, it's the same split, right? So the same age grouping is playing out. And again, I think what's really interesting here, even if you can't remember what they are, is to see how different regions. Would you go back to the map one more time and just check what region 7 is? Yeah, so region 7 is in the Midwest. And so when you hear people talking about, go back to the lines now. when you hear people talking about the kind of the crisis that's been happening in the Midwest, well, this was the surge that happened in the Midwest, really, in terms of positivity. And again, one of the things that you have to remember, right, is we'll be talking about things going up or things going down. You have to remember which data point we're tracking, because the four big data points are lab test positivity or lab test rates, mortality, hospital ICU usage, and then cases. And all four have to be interpreted differently. And I honestly think, I don't know if Victoria, you agree with me, but for me, test positivity is the hardest, because I just have to keep in mind that it's not necessarily a universal that low is good, but it usually means low is good. I think in this stage of the pandemic, and of course this might become dated real quick, but right now we need the test positivity rate to be low, because it indicates that the testing strategy and the isolation strategy is playing out well. But again, we just want to give some help. It's really hard for a frequently asked questions document to kind of capture all these nuances and all these questions. And so I think this is one of the reasons why I wanted to make these videos, is to capture exactly complicated stuff like this. Yeah,
now a question I have is, it looks like the 12 to 17 age group and the 18 to 24 group are not doing so great right now.
Yeah,
why do you think that is?
So here's, and first of all, I'm not an expert in this. I should acknowledge this. I don't know. But I believe that the issue is this. Just imagine a 5-year-old going into the emergency room with COVID-like symptoms, or a 70-year-old. Well, you're going to get them tested, right? You're going to make sure that they have COVID, because they're in these vulnerable groups. If you're 18 to 24 and you're healthy, in general, you might have a physician saying, look, if you've got COVID systems, just stay home, right? You going to get tested is a miserable experience. It doesn't help that much. We're just going to assume you have COVID. You don't need to be COVID. You need to isolate. And I think by making decisions not to test when, for instance, you're not in a high-risk category, what that will do to the percentage is it will raise the percentage of the amount you're getting tested, or the amount of positivity. And that's probably okay, right? Is my first, hypothesis. But this is a kind of question, that's an excellent question. And it's questions like that. You really need to have a background in epidemiology, which I know enough to be very dangerous, in order to be able to ask and answer those questions. Probably multiple factors there. Having said that, having this information be out there and transparent, and having these discussions like, why is that happening? This is the whole point of this. And a good question like that is the kind of question that we might ferry back into the federal government and see if we get a CDC epidemiologist to give a real formal answer to it. And you certainly shouldn't necessarily say, well, Fred Trotter said, this is the reason, right? That Fred Trotter doesn't know anything. Fred Trotter's not an expert in this. I'm just saying there is possibly some intuitive reasons why these numbers make sense. And it's really important to start to delve into them when they don't, right? Because when they don't make sense, when you see a pattern like the one you're seeing there, Victoria, that doesn't make sense, it's always worth investigating, because there might be something significant going on in the data. And some of these data are so strange, especially when you get into the Excel version. If you start to notice patterns in smaller cities, there might be patterns that have never been seen before. So it's really important to kind of raise those questions.